This video is unscripted and will probably have quite a few cuts and some ums and ers in it, I'm sure. It's also about a topic that, while positive, is quite emotive for me. So please do forgive me if I'm a little slow or I get a bit choked up at times. I won't make any apologies for that. So, as you saw from the title, I travelled 6,000 miles to see my favourite band. That band is the Handsome Devil, just up there. If you've not heard of them, a shame, but don't worry. Not many people have. They're doing pretty well these days. A million monthly listeners on Spotify, which is great. So this is my story of what happened. So I travelled from the UK, in case you couldn't tell from the accent, and I travelled to Albany in upstate New York, steamed hams, etc. And then I took the Amtrak train the next morning on the 1st of May over to Buffalo to see them there as well. And first of all, how was I able to do this? Well, it actually wasn't as expensive as you would think. I got quite a good deal with some flights. It turns out it's pretty difficult to fly directly to Buffalo and Albany. Not many places seem to, at least where I'm from. And I had to fly to Charlotte, which is in North Carolina, on the way out. And then I had originally booked to fly back from Philadelphia Airport, but I had a change of plans, which I will discuss later. And that meant I ended up flying back actually from Canada. But if you know your geography, you can probably see the correlation between Buffalo and flying from Canada. So, all in all, it cost me, before I made my alterations, the Airbnbs and the flights came in at less than about 900, between 8 and 900 English Great British pounds, good boy points, GBP. So about 900 euros, $1,100, something like that. So not as difficult as it could be. I'm a solo traveller, I'm a single man, no children, so it wasn't exactly, I wasn't putting my life on hold. So how was it? Yeah, unbelievable. I've been to America once before. I went to New York City and I went to Boston, Massachusetts, and the American people are, just amazing. They're so friendly, they're so welcoming. I get I'm a bit of a novelty, not myself personally, but as a kind of, British traveller, of course, you stand out in countries you're not from, and but people are always so kind, they're always so friendly, and you're always made to feel very, very welcome. I remember I arrived quite late in Albany on the 28th, and I had like a whole day spare on the 29th before the gig on the 30th of April. And on the 29th, I remember doing the few touristy things. Albany's not a very touristy city, but like I went to the old State Senate. I went to the museum. There's a museum across the road, which is all very good. And then I thought, I'm going to pop in for a bit of a late lunch at about 3 p.m. And I remember chatting to some friends. I remember making some sort of new friends. Shout out to the Excelsior Bar in Albany. Really, really great, lovely people. And I think I left at closing. I think I walked out at midnight. Made to feel so welcome. I thank them so much for that. It was a real nice day. And then the 30th, the day of the gig, I wasn't too hungover considering how long I've been drinking. I'm an Irishman living in England, etc. So I'm pretty I can drink. But it was fantastic. The gig was I know the doors were early, but I got there like at the door before doors because I just wanted to be like immersed and I wanted to be. It was at an event. Was it a venue called the Empire Underground, I think, in Albany? Was its name, and it was Human Zoo with a support. There was actually a guy one before that who I think was like a local musician or another touring musician who did some acoustic numbers, but I didn't actually see most of that set because I was kind of just milling about and at the bar and stuff. But from what I heard, he was very decent. But Human Zoo with the support, they were fantastic. They do a little sort of game during their set where they pull someone up on someone. Basically, does anyone have anything they want to say? Nobody volunteered, and I was like, yeah, why not? I will, even if I make a fool of myself. I'm not going to see these people again. But I like to think I didn't. I got a good round of applause. I remember just speaking about how again how wonderfully welcoming this country is. How that I'd come like over I think one way out is like 3,500 miles or something. Plus the distance from Charlotte to North Carolina, from North Carolina, sorry, to Albany. So like, by the end of it, it was like over 4,000 miles for that one gig. And Yeah, I mean it was fantastic. They were great. I really enjoyed chatting to them, and I really enjoyed. I actually enjoyed their music a lot. I'd not heard of them actually, but I was impressed at them, and I was, I made to feel so welcome. Their music was fantastic. And then the main event. So for some background, That Handsome Devil have existed. Their earliest ever track was technically probably 2002 with a song called The Behind Your Back Dance, which some good archiving work a few years back managed to recover and put it online, so it is there. You can find it here on YouTube. And not all of their discography is available on Spotify. Quite a lot of it's missing. So, and particularly these kind of unreleased singles. There's a couple of covers in there as well that are only on the YouTube, and some not even their official one often. It's their efforts from dedicated fans around the world. I was part of some of those efforts, although I never had much luck because they don't really have a presence here in England, which is a shame. But I remember feeling incredibly emotional, and I'm not a particular, I don't know if it comes across in my voice, I'm not a particularly emotional person. It's not very, I mean, a lot of people in the UK are a bit sort of, stiff upper lip, etc. And I held it together pretty well. For the first few songs, I was just like, I was right at the front, slap bang in the middle, right at the front, because I'd been there the whole time. And though I got chatting to before the gig started, I got chatting to this lady and her partner. I can't remember her name. I think it started with E, but her partner has an Instagram that is called The Chainsaw Poet, and he was a absolutely fantastic guy, really lovely man, and it's not my business to say, but he was walking with a cane. He'd had a recent health issue, and I wished him well in that recovery, and I do so again. Shout out to The Chainsaw Poet on Instagram. Very, very, very great guy. Go and give him a follow. And and when it came time for that handsome devil, as I said, I was very, very emotional. I was kind of like, I wasn't like in tears or anything, but I could feel like, you can feel that lump in your throat. I could feel like the hairs on my arm were standing up and things, and it was very, very intense. And it was a very small venue, or pretty small venue, very, very full, like packed to the back door. And the acoustics weren't amazing. They were good. Don't get me wrong. It's not the fucking Royal Albert Hall. It's like a bar. It's an underground bar. Of course, it's going to be a bit raw, but that's always the point of these slightly smaller gigs. I've been to plenty in my time. Camden Underworld, for example, up in London. But I remember the moment I actually sort of, this is getting to me now, was Elephant Bones, which is a song I adore, but isn't by no means my favourite. The tour was celebrating 20 years of the first EP, which is just called That Handsome Devil, and fantastic, available on Spotify. Fully encourage you to listen to it. And so they played the first few tracks, and don't get me wrong, there are some fucking bangers in there, but there was something about Elephant Bones where I actually started to get like so kind of immersed in the gig that I felt it then. I was sort of, from that point on, after every song, I was kind of like, yeah, trying to like hold it together, because men don't like to cry. I don't mind saying that. I haven't cried since my grandfather's funeral when I was a child, fucking 20 years ago, but like I did actually have a little kind of like choking up, and then and as the gig went on and more songs got rattled off, it's like I felt it some more, but I was just having so much fun, and it was probably the most fun. It was probably like the best thing I've ever done, really. And this is the first gig in Albany, and I just remember when the lights came up at the end of this gig, they came on, did an encore, they played the set, did an encore. And when they came up, when the lights came up at the end, I was in fucking pieces. I literally had like my head buried in my shirt, because I wasn't like sobbing, but I was crying. I was like, it was so like 20 years I'd waited to do that. 20 years I'd waited to, I've been a fan of this band since the beginning. 20 years I'd waited to do that. And like, and I just remember fucking just proper bawling. Like I bumped into the Chainsaw Poet guy. He's like, "Hey, you doing good? You good, man?" I was like, "Yeah." I felt, it felt fantastic, and And I got to meet the band at the end. They did like a signing table thing, so I got to chat with God Forbid, the lead singer. I chatted with Jeremy, the guitarist, Noka, the another band, the sort of what's the word, backup vocals, and oh my god, I just literally I was in. I couldn't really. I took some nice pictures, which I'm not very. I don't really do that. I don't take many photos of anything, but I got to take some, and I was in pieces. I wanted to talk to them more, but I could barely sort of find the words. And I remember it ended quite late actually. It was almost midnight by the time this gig finished, which was quite late for us. You don't really get that too much in the UK. But and I just remember spilling out onto Albany, which is in a city I didn't know, and my Uber driver on the way from the airport had told me, it's pretty rough around here. It fucking isn't. From what some of the shit places I've been in England, and I just remember I'm lucky I picked the right direction, but I just remember walking like 2 miles out of the venue just in a complete daze. I don't remember much of that, and I just picked a random direction and I just walked. Fortunately, it was in the direction of my Airbnb. And I ended up in some like burger joint thing at like 1 o'clock in the morning, just sitting there like almost like steaming. You kind of feel the sort of energy radiating off me. And I remember oh my god, I wish I could describe that. But there's a part of me that's thinking, right, I've got to be pragmatic. I've got to get to Buffalo in the morning. So I managed to walk home. I think I got into my my Airbnb at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I actually rang my mother back home. Obviously, she was on. It's like 7. It was like 7:30 back in the UK, and she was awake. And just couldn't really explain it to her, and just being like, oh Christ, I can't even like put it into words. So yeah, it was so intense. It was almost too much in a way. It was too much of It was so intense. I just remember thinking, my god, that's insane. And then the next day came, and I got on the early Amtrak. Amtrak is the US state trains, and I travelled the 4 or 5 hours, I can't remember, from Albany to Buffalo. Got into Buffalo. Now, even though you're not any more northerly, I was convinced it was colder in Buffalo. You can tell you're close to the border here with Canada, that type of thing. All that cold air coming off of Lake Erie. And anyway, and then the night of the second gig, I did the same thing again. Arrived early, really enjoyed Human Zoo. Someone else got to go up on stage, because I would have volunteered again, but nobody. If nobody did, I would have done it again. But that was somebody else. That they've given me that. That's somebody else's right to enjoy that moment. And bless her, I never got the guy's name, but they were in front of me in the queue to get in. And bear in mind, I got there super early, so did these people, because they'd come from Denmark. It was a couple, and she only went by the name Cheesecake. That's genuinely true. She introduced herself as Cheesecake. And it was a couple who'd come all the way from Denmark, which is pretty much as far as I had. I'm surprised they didn't do what I did and just go to the Albany gig as well while you're that far away. But anyway, unless they were and I didn't see them, but they didn't say. I mentioned I'd done that as well, and they didn't say. But anyway, and she got to go up on stage, and she had a lot of fun with Human Zoo, like as I had done the day before. And so and the Buffalo show was different. This is where this kind of, honestly, the real reason I'm making this video is to kind of process what sort of happened next. And I'm not going to use any names for this because it's not fair, but after that show, when I was a bit more, again, fantastic show, acoustics were a bit better. It was a last minute change of venue to a place called, I think, the Showplace Theatre in Buffalo. And the venue was a bit bigger and there wasn't quite as many people in it. And even though I was a bit better prepared, I could actually remember, I had my brain switched on, so I'd managed to stash like my jacket somewhere. I wasn't stuck with it. I'd bought a few bottles of water, so I was kind of like more with it. It was less intense emotionally for me, but it still wasn't. It was like, the only way I can describe it is the tennis player Andy Murray once described that the first time he won Wimbledon, it was too much for him. That was my Wimbledon. That's probably the happiest I'll ever be, and that's kind of a sad thing to. Well, slightly it will come. I'll get happier slightly later. I'll explain in a moment. But yeah, and for me that was the same. It was kind of the second one, even though like I could sort of enjoy, quote, the music more, if you know what I mean. Like, I could kind of process more what I was seeing. I still got choked up at certain points, but I was much more measured, and I had a much better, longer conversation with God Forbid from the band. Who I'm not going to repeat what we said because that is too personal to me. That's something I'll probably never share with anyone. But it was so like I couldn't describe. It was indescribable how happy I was, which is not common for me. You know, I'm not a very emotive person. And I'm not a particularly happy person, which I know sounds a bit strange, but it's kind of true. But I then, after this gig, I stayed chatting to them for quite a long time, and you know, the guys at the venue were really like impressed how far I'd come and and the fact I'd come from Albany the day before, and like they sung me happy birthday. Also, they didn't sing. They, God forbid, said happy birthday to me on stage because the 1st of May was my 31st birthday. And you see bits of fragments of it coming back as I remember it in real time because it was just so intense for me. But the guys on the merch stand were super. They were like hyped as fuck. Human Zoo were impressed I'd come back. It was great. And before I go into too much detail, I just want to say I was also going. So I skipped the two Ohio shows because Cleveland is a pain in the ass to get to without, you know, you'd have to get on a bus, etc. And then I actually did then decide to go to the Detroit show, which, even though I was supposed to fly home on the 5th, but I thought, fuck it, I'm not going home, I'm enjoying myself too much. And I was supposed to fly home on the 5th, but I didn't, and I ended up staying out a bit longer. And I was going to go to the Detroit show, I had the ticket, I had the bus ticket, but this Greyhound bus thing just never showed up. And when you went to the customer service desk, they were like, oh yeah, it broke down last night, which is weird, because it was the fucking morning, but oh yeah, it'll be 2 hours. You won't get, the next one will be at 2 p.m. Well, the gig was at 8. I think the gig was at 7. And it takes fucking 6 hours to drive. So I was like, well, that's not fucking happening. So I ended up actually just getting a refund and staying in Buffalo. Shout outs to the Airbnb I stayed at. She was a lovely woman, saved my ass. And because I ended up being stranded in Buffalo where I didn't plan to be. But anyway. And now the kind of crux of the story and the real reason not the real reason, but one of the biggest reason I'm telling this story is, as I said, I'm not going to use any names, but I met someone at this Buffalo gig, and they spoke to me outside. I'd actually spoken to the band for quite a long time. I'd gone into the store next door to the venue, and this person approached me. I think they said, like, hey, English, and I was like, because we had been chatting very briefly in the merch line, and this person asked for my number. Now, I'm not used to that. I am a single man, and I've been single for 10 years. And I've only ever had, like, one real long kind of not even long term, it was just over a year kind of relationship. That's something that's, you know, not very common for me. And I thought, you know, why not? You know, I'm in America, you know, hey, should we just grab a drink now? She agreed. I said, right, this is your city. You know, you tell me where you want to go. And went to a really great bar called, it's called Good Bar, I think. And I mean, again, I think we danced to the band that was in. We were like, that they were playing. There was like a pub band on who were really good. I had a few drinks, and you know, we played pool for a few hours, and like we ended up like leaving this place. We were chatting outside, smoking, and I remember leaving this place at like 4:30 in the morning, I think, or like 4 in the morning, maybe 3. And then we went in search of food. There absolutely nothing was open, not even McDonald's. So I remember we just pulled into some parking lot and we were just talking in our car. And in that moment, I'm like, fucking hell, man. If I could, like, you know, I said it like this, if I fucking died now, I'd die happy. There's like, we were singing that Handsome Devil songs to each other. We were chatting about her. She was an incredible singer. She is an incredible singer. And you can probably guess the reason I'm, you know, now talking about this, because, now don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. And I said to her, look, you know, if that was like, I texted her the next day saying, like, hey, if that was like a one-time thing, look, I do understand. And But what happened after we like, don't get me, nothing happened. We just chatted, and I said like goodbye. I got back to my room at like 5, so I must have left at like 4 or something from her car. And she invited me to go to the restaurant that she worked at. I won't say which one, but I went, and I said to her, "Hey, do you want to meet after?" And this is the bit I feel, and because I'm not you. The reason I mentioned the fact I'm not used to like that type of attention is because when I went and had some food, and then I went across the road to a bar, and I sat in a bar and I waited for this person. And it got to like 10:30 at night, and I thought, yeah, I fucked this up here. Like, she's not interested in me. I'm a fucking, you're a loser, basically, and I fucked off. And then she texts me like an hour later saying, oh, God, yeah, like, hey, I'm coming over, or something like that, as in I'm coming to the bar, or are you still in the bar? Something like that. And I felt awful. I felt absolutely dreadful. And I was like, hey, fuck. I was actually in bed, but I was like, fuck, I'll come back. And I literally jumped out of bed, put my clothes on. She said like, nah, it's okay. Like, I'm tired anyway. It's a very long shift for her, to be fair. And I felt quite bad about that. And then I texted the next day saying like, I don't think I actually addressed it at the time, because like it wasn't like a date. It was like a hey, if I'm still kind of there thing. But I texted her from a bar the next day saying like, hey, you know, listen, I really enjoyed the other night. I'd really like to see you again, but if I'm not naive, if that was like a one-time thing, I do get it, I do understand, and I, really, I'll remember it forever. Something like that, something like that. And she replied that it wasn't the case, and that she was kind of interested in seeing me again, and I was very, very pleased at that. So this is where the second part of this video's title comes in, kind of more of what it taught me about myself. And it taught me that it's always been something I'm aware of, and it's something I've tried to ignore. But if you're feeling it as well, I recommend you address it as well. And it's this kind of, if you Google hyperfixation or hyper-infatuation, it kind of assumes you're talking about hyperfixations with like an activity or an object, like some people with like ADHD and autism might sometimes feel. But there's not actually a great amount of help and support for people, or even literature really, about people who hyperfixate on people, on kind of attention, on. And my argument, the problem I have is that I'm quite an analytical person, as this runtime has probably showed you. But the problem I had was that in my head, I'm thinking, well, of course I want to, grab this opportunity with kind of both hands, because who the fuck am I going to meet ever again that goes to a band like this, is chill as fuck, really great to talk to, very, very intelligent, very good looking, very, very intelligent, very, very kind, very, wonderfully talented with her singing, very knowledgeable, and just going to the same gig, shooting pool all night, chatting, singing to each other in the car. If you asked me to plan a first date, it would probably look like that. That isn't what it was, and I should specify that, but that's how it felt to me privately at the time, of just like, what the this isn't real, like this is made up, like this is the Truman Show type of thing. And then it occurred to me that there was a part of me that was going, after the fact, who does this? Because as soon as she said, I want to see you again, I immediately cancelled my travel plans. I was like, right, fuck this, I'm going to stay here longer. And again, I'm not broke, but I'm not wealthy. This was a financial hit, and one I was happy to take at the time. But then a part of me was, who does that? Who actually does that? And and I should really point out, this was not me thinking, oh, I can get laid here. That fucking thought never entered my head. I'm not that type of person. As I said, I've been single for 10 years, and I've had opportunities for one-night stands, etc., and I have never taken them. It's just not something I've ever been interested in. Kind of short-term, flingy things. It's not something I do. It's not something I'm interested in. I can't state that emphatically enough. But and I just remember thinking, like, and instantly there's a part of me that's like, and I know it's unhealthy. I know it's unhealthy to be like obsessed is the wrong word. I should make that very clear. It's not some kind of like, hey, I'm gonna fucking follow you around and text you 1,000 times a day. I text her once or twice a day, and then if I didn't get a reply, I would just leave it. I'm not kind of. I should make that distinction quite clear. And I remember we didn't actually then see each other again after this like restaurant. After I saw her in the restaurant for like a couple of days, and I I had stuff to do, and I said to her I'm going to go to the Detroit gig, but I will come back this way. That was the original plan. Obviously, it didn't happen because the Detroit bus didn't run, so I ended up staying in Buffalo longer. But again, I didn't turn up. I didn't blow up her phone. I didn't turn up to the restaurant, anything like that. I was just like, I was just kind of finding stuff to do in Buffalo. Obviously, Niagara Falls is a big one. I spent a lot of time watching a lot of sports and a lot of bars, which, to be fair, is what I would choose to have done anyway. Like, which is pretty good. But Sabres going all the way, etc. And then the day before I had to leave. So what ended up happening is I had to fly back from Pearson International because it's actually easier to get a train into Canada and then fly from Pearson back to London than it is try and get to an international airport, basically. I was going to go to Philadelphia, but by the time I ended up staying in Buffalo, the thing that was easier was to actually go to Pearson International and then fly home, which is what I did. And the day before I had to leave, my last full day, in Buffalo, because I left Buffalo on the Saturday, and then I flew home on the Sunday. So this was the Friday. I said, "Hey, look, I'm leaving on Friday. Do you mind if? On Saturday. Do you mind? Can I swing by the restaurant?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course." I didn't feel it was right to just turn up. I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I come to the restaurant?" Yeah. I said, right, I will see you over the road, and I won't fuck it up this time. And I did wait, and we did meet, and we had a few drinks, and we chatted a bit. And that was the point I kind of realized that fuck me, like I'm kind of in too deep here, and I don't want to. I'm not going to reveal the conversations we had, etc., because it's not fair on that person. I already feel a bit like funny about telling this story at all, but I'm not going to go into the details because that is too far. But we spoke for quite a long time, and I just fucked it up, man. I just nothing happened, but I just like everything I've ever done, I managed to fuck it up. I managed to fuck up something kind of like. I don't even know if I was just trying to. I don't even know what I was trying to do. Was I trying to be clever? Was I trying to be poetic? But I couldn't see the signs in front of me that I knew it wasn't the time. I'm not naive. This is going to be some whirlwind romance where one of us, throws our current living situation away for the other one. I'm not naive like that. I know it's more like the film Lost in Translation, and I kept saying that to myself in my head that this ain't going to be forever, so we might as well enjoy the time together. And I still managed to fuck it up, and that's kind of the personal revelation that this has led me to in the last 28 minutes has got me to come to, is that I am emotionally unstable, and not in a because I want to hurt people and kill myself way. I'm emotionally unstable in that I have absolutely no regulation on my emotions. I feel them extremely strongly suddenly. I either don't feel them at all, which is 90% of the time, or I feel them overwhelmingly. And actually, when I was waiting for my flight home, I actually contacted a therapist back here in the UK, and so I think I actually do want to discuss this, because it's not the first time this kind of hyper-infatuation has happened. And I think a quote normal person, I don't like to use that word, but you know what I mean. I think a quote normal person would be able to not because as I said, I understood this wasn't going to be some kind of, hey, I'll stay here forever. I get that, and yet I still can't regulate the emotional side of it. I get the logical side, but I don't think we're going to stay in contact, and which is a shame because I'd really like to. But and it kind of made me realize that everything I've ever done, I've managed to fuck up, and that doesn't sound like it's not me asking for sympathy. When I look at it objectively, I can't get close to people. I fuck up most jobs I've had. I'm very soon changing jobs after like 10 years. Oops, yeah, after like 10 years because for other reasons. But and I suppose, even though I'm not going to say who, I suppose I'm sorry if you felt I fucked it up, because I certainly feel that way. And there's nothing to like confess. It's not like that. I really should state that. But I know I missed the kind of, when I replay the conversation in my head, I didn't look like someone that was like, it's hard to describe, but when I replay the conversation we had in my head, I was not, I so wanted it to be something, I so wanted it that I so wanted to like be with this person long term, even after that short amount of time together. I know I wasn't. I know I was kind of not listening. God, that sounds really bad. No. Okay, basically, so she kept saying that you've made a great friend, and in my head, I'm saying to myself, yeah, but I'm fucking crazy about you, and that is why I think I fucked up. And I can look back on that, and I spent the whole plane ride over just like, I spent the whole plane journey home just staring at the floor saying like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? And yeah, so I regret that. I regret that a lot. I planned this trip, and when I was telling people, when people said to me like, fucking hell, you've come all the way from England for this band, and I'd be like, yeah, too many regrets in life, and this is not one I would, missing this band would be one too many. But I've managed to collect another massive regret, which is I fucked up what could have been and should be a wonderful friendship with somebody because I can't regulate my emotions. And yeah, that was quite a painful revelation, really. A man doesn't like to admit he's upset, but I've cried since I got back. And it's when you're stuck on a flight that you can't sleep on, because I never sleep on planes, and you can't get up, you can't walk around, etc. You just have that burrowing in your head that you can't turn it off. That will cause some pretty grim revelations. And I understand this is a bit of a change of pace for this video, but it's kind of the whole reason I wanted to make it, was because it's made me aware how I am completely unable to regulate emotions from anything other than extremes, so to nothing to extremely intense. And I hope I can learn some skills to address that. And if it's something that you parallel in your life, I haven't started this therapy yet. I'm starting it on Thursday. I'm starting it in 2 days' time from the time of recording. I really hope maybe that it can help somebody else kind of make that realization. And it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. I dare say anger is probably one. I think probably that's probably the most obvious one I can think of, that people can't really regulate their anger. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think there are many people that don't say, oh, I can't get angry enough, but there are certainly people who obviously get too angry too quickly and do silly things. For me, that's not really for me. I don't really get particularly, I get far more angry at myself than I do at other people, and I am quite an angry person, but I've never like lashed out at somebody, that type of thing. Like, it tends to be inanimate objects. If in the very few occasions that I won't describe it, but I had an incident at my job once where somebody got very badly injured. I used to work in the prison service, where somebody got very badly injured from something that we all could see coming, and management decided to do anyway. Actually, I remember like punching a door off its hinges. That's what my anger looks like, and that's very rare. But yeah, I think it's made me come to an uncomfortable but probably overdue understanding about myself, that this kind of, because I can think of times in the past as well where you get shown kind of when I try and look at it reasonably, probably what I would describe as maybe just common courtesy. maybe a bit more than that, like maybe slight interest at kind of the strongest, and you just latch onto it because you're not used to it, because you're craving it so badly, you're craving that connection, that you end up self-sabotaging because you can't regulate your emotions in that connection, and you can't blame the person for thinking, whoa, actually, hang on. Don't get me wrong, I didn't fall down at my feet and confess my love to this woman. I didn't try and do anything physical. And you know, I mean, and still managed to find a way to fuck it up. Like, and that's what I'm ashamed of myself at, and that's what I'm angry at myself at. That I couldn't see the wood for the trees. I couldn't see the bigger picture, etc. And you know, and if in the unlikely event she is watching, if you felt disrespected, if you felt, I can only apologize, and I hope this serves as a well, I don't even know what a warning to others, perhaps, and a very real mea culpa from myself. And yeah, I don't really know how to kind of end this, and I'm sure there'll be 10,000 things I want to say afterwards, but yeah, if you've somehow made it this far, then I suggest you probably have deeper psychological problems than I do. But anyway, no, yeah, I flew 6,000 miles to see my favourite band, and it taught me an awful lot about myself. So, there is, I guess there's that. Good night.